When you hear the name Dracula, you probably imagine a blood-sucking vampire. But the real Dracula was far more terrifying, and he actually existed. His real name was Vlad III, a ruler whose brutal reputation spread across Europe more than 500 years ago. He ruled a small kingdom called Wallachia, located in what is now modern-day Romania, between powerful rival empires. Europe was a dangerous place, filled with war, betrayal, and constant invasions. Survival often depended on strength and fear. From a young age, Vlad was trained to become a warrior, learning the skills he would later use to defend his kingdom. As a teenager, Vlad was taken hostage by the powerful Ottoman Empire, where he spent years living under the watch of his enemies. During his captivity, he learned valuable lessons about warfare, leadership, and the ruthless methods used by powerful rulers. When he finally returned home, Vlad was determined to reclaim his father's throne and restore order to his troubled kingdom. After years of conflict, Vlad became ruler of Wallachia, but his reign would soon become one of the most feared in history. Surrounded by powerful enemies on every side, Vlad believed that only absolute fear could protect his kingdom, and the world would never forget the methods he chose. Almost immediately after taking the throne, Vlad faced a powerful enemy. The expanding Ottoman Empire, one of the strongest military forces in the world. Outnumbered and surrounded, Vlad knew he couldn't win through numbers alone. He needed something far more powerful, fear. Instead of fighting traditional battles, Vlad relied on surprise attacks, clever tactics, and psychological warfare to weaken his enemies. As the Ottoman army advanced, they found deserted villages and empty roads, but the real horror was still waiting ahead. To terrify his enemies, Vlad ordered captured soldiers to be displayed on towering wooden stakes. The sight alone was enough to stop entire armies in their tracks. This brutal tactic earned him the name that history would never forget, Vlad the Impaler. Stories about Vlad's ruthless methods spread rapidly across Europe, making him one of the most feared rulers of his time. To some people, Vlad was a hero who defended his country. To others, he was a cruel ruler whose punishments knew no limits. As these stories spread from town to town, they grew more dramatic, making it difficult to separate historical fact from legend. Centuries later, these terrifying tales would inspire one of the most famous fictional monsters ever created, the vampire Dracula. But where did the name Dracula actually come from? The answer has nothing to do with vampires. Vlad's father belonged to a powerful order known as the Order of the Dragon, a group created to defend Christianity against invading forces. Because of this, Vlad's father became known as Dracul, a Romanian word connected to the dragon. The name Dracula simply meant son of Dracul, or more literally, son of the dragon. As merchants traveled across Europe, the stories about Vlad became more frightening with every retelling. The invention of the printing press helped spread these terrifying stories farther than ever before, making Vlad famous across Europe. Some stories were based on real events, while others became exaggerated over time, making it difficult to separate truth from fiction. Centuries later, Irish author Bram Stoker discovered the name Dracula and borrowed it for his famous vampire novel. Although the novel borrowed Vlad's name, the famous vampire was largely a work of fiction rather than a true historical portrait. From that moment on, history and legend became forever linked, transforming a real medieval ruler into one of the world's most famous fictional monsters. Despite what movies suggest, the real Vlad Dracula wasn't a vampire. He was an ordinary human being, a medieval ruler known for his ruthless leadership. There's no historical evidence that Vlad drank blood or possessed any supernatural powers. Those ideas were invented centuries later. Many people believe Dracula lived in Romania's famous Bran Castle, but historians say there's little evidence that Vlad ever lived there. Over time, tourism and popular culture connected Vlad to Bran Castle, creating one of history's most famous myths. After years of war, Vlad fought one final campaign to defend his kingdom, knowing the odds were against him. Sometime around 1476, Vlad was killed in battle, but historians still debate exactly how he died. Even his final resting place remains uncertain. Several tombs have been linked to Vlad, but none have been proven beyond doubt. For decades, archaeologists have searched for evidence that could finally solve the mystery surrounding his burial. As the centuries passed, the real man slowly disappeared beneath layers of legend, until history and fiction became almost impossible to separate. The real Vlad may be gone, but the legend of Dracula had only just begun, and it would soon become one of the most famous stories ever told. Long after Vlad's death, Hollywood transformed his story into the image we all recognize today. A mysterious vampire dressed in black. Books, movies, and television turned Dracula into a global icon. But most of these stories have very little to do with the real man. Today, Romania attracts millions of visitors every year, many hoping to discover the truth behind the Dracula legend. Although Bran Castle is known around the world as Dracula's Castle, historians remind visitors that the connection is mostly based on legend. Across Romania, festivals and historical events celebrate Vlad as an important figure in the nation's past, rather than as a supernatural monster. Many historians believe Vlad should be remembered as a complex ruler whose actions reflected the violent world in which he lived. By carefully studying historical evidence, researchers continue separating the real Vlad from centuries of myths and exaggerations. Over time, one man's story evolved into one of the most famous legends ever created, inspiring countless books, movies, and television shows. The truth is often more fascinating than fiction, and the real story of Dracula proves that history can be just as unforgettable as any legend. Today, museums across Romania preserve the real history of Vlad III, helping visitors separate historical evidence from centuries of myth. Not every story about Vlad is true. Historians constantly compare different sources to determine which events really happened and which became legends. Over hundreds of years, storytellers exaggerated many events, making it increasingly difficult to separate fact from fiction. Today, schools, museums, and historians teach the true story behind Dracula, revealing the fascinating history hidden beneath the legend. The real Vlad was a prince, a military leader, and a controversial ruler, not an immortal vampire with supernatural powers. Whether remembered as a hero or a tyrant, Vlad spent much of his life defending his kingdom against overwhelming enemies. One man's life inspired books, movies, television shows, and countless legends, proving the lasting power of history. The more historians learn about Vlad, the more they discover that the truth is often far more interesting than the myths. Behind every famous legend lies a real story, and sometimes that true story is even more remarkable than fiction itself. The next time you hear the name Dracula, remember this. Before the legend, before the vampire, there was a real man whose life changed history forever. And history still holds countless mysteries waiting to be uncovered.